back. Today we're talking about solving absolute value equations. So if we take a look at our notes, we start off with the absolute value of -4 equals, and anything that goes inside my absolute value comes out positive. Okay. So in that case, the absolute value of +4 is also equal to +4. So knowing those two lines of information, if I have the absolute value of x equals x, then I can say that x is either negative x inside that absolute value, or it's positive x. So if I look over at the next side, it says the absolute value of y equals 8. That means that y could either be a -8 or a +8. So with this information, we're going to go ahead and start on our examples. We're going to start with example 1, which has 3 times the absolute value of 3x minus 7 equals 2. Trying to get the absolute value by itself, so the first thing I would do is add 7 to both sides. The positive and -7 cancel out. I'm left with 3 times the absolute value of 3x equals my 2 plus 7 gives me a positive sign. We'll keep going. The next thing I would do is divide by 3. I'm still trying to get the absolute value by itself. My 3's will divide out on the left-hand side. Left with the absolute value of 3x equals, and then 9 divided by 3 still gives me 3. If we keep going, the next thing I do is I have to make 2 equations. So I'll write equation 1 over here, and that's going to be 3x equals 3. So 3x equals 3. My second equation is going to be 3x equals -3. So these are my 2 cases. This is with and without my absolute values, right? I could have a -3, I could have a +3. And we're going to solve both of these equations. So in equation 1, I'm going to divide by 3. I'm trying to get x by itself. My 3's divide out, and I get x equals +1. In equation 2, still dividing by that +3. 3's divide out, I get x. My -3 divided by a +3 gives me a negative answer, and in this case, that's going to give me -1. So my 2 answers are going to be x equals 1 and x equals -1. And you should always check your answers, so you'll take your 2 x values and you'll plug them back into the original equation to see if you get 2 as your solution. So now that we did number 1, we're going to go ahead and take a look at number 2. Still the same process, still the same method. I have the absolute value of 5 minus 6x minus 10 equals 8. Trying to get the absolute value by itself, so I add 10 to both sides. My positive and -10s cancel out. Left with 5 minus 6x inside my absolute value equals +18. Now, just like before, I'm going to make 2 equations again. Equation 1, we'll write a line right here to separate our questions. So equation 1, I get 5 minus 6x equals +18. Equation 2, the same thing, except my answer is going to be negative. 5 minus 6x equals -18. So I've got equation 1 and equation 2. I have to solve both of them. Starting with equation 1, I would subtract 5 from both sides. My 5's cancel out. I'm left with -6x equals 18 minus 5 gives me 13. Last step, divide by -6. When I do this, my -6's divide out. I'm just left with x equals, and then my -13 over 6. I can't simplify that anymore, so I get -13 over 6 is my answer for equation 1. Then in equation 2, I'm still going to do the same thing. So I start by subtracting 5 from both sides. My 5's cancel out. Left with negative 6x equals, and this time negative 18 minus 5. My answer will be negative. I have a negative minus a negative. And this gives me a negative 23. Last step, divide by that negative 6. Negative over negative, my negatives divide out, my 6's divide out, I'm left with a positive x equals negative 23 divided by negative 6. My negative will give me a positive, and I'm just left with 23 over 6. Once again, you can always plug in your answers to your initial equation. So you plug it back into that absolute value of 5 minus 6x minus 10 equals 8. And check and solve and see if you still get that solution of 8. And then in number 1, see if you still get that solution of positive 2. Few more examples, and then we'll talk about your homework assignment. Almost got everything done. Taking so long to grade. Ooh. Interesting. There we go. So we're gonna jump around in our examples. We're gonna do example 3, and then we'll look at example 6. So looking at example 3, I have 8 times 3, the absolute value of 3x minus 10 minus 12 equals positive 20. So trying to get that absolute value by itself. So my first step, I have to move over that negative 12, which means I'm going to add 12 to both sides. Positive and negative 12 cancel out. I rewrite what I have left over, in this case, 8 times the absolute value of 3x minus 10. And now 20 plus 12 is going to give me a 32. Next up, I still have that 8 multiplied to the front, so I have to do the opposite. So I'm going to divide everything by positive 8. My 8's divide out, I'm left with the absolute value of 3x minus 10. And then 32 divided by 8 gives me a positive 4. Next up, we got to write our 2 equations again. So equation 1, get 3x minus 10 equals positive 4. Equation 2, 3x minus 10 equals negative 4. We're going to solve these real quick. So I have my negative 10. I have to move over to the other side. So I'm going to add 10. 10's cancel out. And I have 3x equals positive 14. Keep going. Got to divide by that positive 3. 3's divide out. And equation 1 tells me that x equals positive 14 over 3. Once again, you can always take that solution and plug it back into your original to see if you still get that answer of positive 20. Now that we've solved equation 1, we're going to solve equation 2. So the same thing, I'm going to start by adding 10 to both sides. My 10's cancel out. Get 3x equals negative 4 plus 10. Okay, don't forget to go. You have a negative and a positive, so you're going to get a positive 6. My signs are opposite. I subtract the numbers and keep the sign of the bigger number, in this case, my positive 10. And then finally, divide by that 3. So now equation 2 tells me x is equal to positive 2. Once again, you can always plug it in, double check that your answer works. So if I plugged in that 2, I should get 3 times 2 minus 10 inside my absolute value, but 6 minus 10, which is now the absolute value of negative 4, times 8, minus 12, If I keep going on my left-hand side, I now have 8 times the absolute value of -4, which would be 8 times a +4. So 32 minus 12. 32 minus 12 gives me 20. 20 equals 20. Bam, done. So I've looked at example 1 and 2, example 3, and we're going to glance at example 6. As soon as all of this is erased. Last one, I have the absolute value of 3x minus 7 divided by 5 equals 2. First things first, I'm being divided by 5. The opposite of my division is my multiplication, which means I have to multiply this side by 5, and whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. So both sides get multiplied by 5. My 5's divide out, left with the absolute value of 3x minus 7 equals 2 times 5 is positive 10. Once again, I'm at my absolute value. I have to write my 2 equations. So equation number 1, 3x minus 7 equals positive 10. Equation number 2, 3x minus 7 equals negative 10. Still got to solve both of them and figure out what my x's are. So I'm going to start by adding 7 to both sides. 7's cancel out. 3x equals 17. Okay, my 10 plus my 7 gave me 17. Divide by positive 3. Now my 3's divide out. I'm just left with x. And I know x equals 17 over 3. So that's the solution to equation number 1. Equation number 2 starts off the same way. I'm going to add 7 to both sides. My 7's cancel out. This time I have negative 10 plus 7. Negative and a positive. I subtract the numbers and keep the sign of the bigger number. So negative 10 plus 7 is going to give you a negative 3. We have 3x equals negative 3. Last step, divide both sides by 3. 3's divide out. You get x equals negative 1. So my 2 solutions are x equals 17 over 3 and x equals negative 1. So those are our notes for today. Now to talk about your assignment. It looks like a lot. I'm not going to have to do all of it. Evens only. And that's your assignment. You have 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. Try your best. Like we said, go ahead and make sure you have your 2 equations, so equation 1 and 2, solve them, and that's all you have to do.